Go ahead, dude.
Hey, Josh and I are in the cupola, and it looks like SSC-16 just rebooted. Wasn't sure if that's something you guys did or if there's a problem with it.
No, that is unexpected. We're going to take a look.
Okay, it looks like it's starting back up right now. If it reboots, okay, do you want me to get RPOP running on it again?
We can set that up from the ground.
That'll be great, thanks.
All right, we'll do.
And you did just hear the voice of NASA astronaut Nicole Mann as she continues to step through procedures here on the ground. Today's Capcom is Megan Harvey. She'll be coordinating with both Nicole Mann as well as Josh Cassida, who are primed for today's rendezvous and docking operations. Continuing to get live views of the Dragon spacecraft as it approaches the International Space Station. 1,480 meters away. You are seeing some small thruster firings there as there is a mid-course maneuver to just ensure that Dragon is going to line up in the correct positioning. Dragon is slated to dock to the zenith port of the Harmony module this morning at 6:30 a.m. Central, just about an hour and 5 minutes from now. The space station and Dragon beginning to enter into an orbital sunrise. The space station is approaching the west coast of South America. And we did hear confirmation that the spacecraft did successfully execute that mid-course maneuver burn.
Houston station on 2 for D5 camera.
Go ahead.
Hey, Megan, we've got one of the new D5s that was just deployed yesterday here in the cupola, and it isn't doing it now, but we did have some trouble in shutter priority. We were seeing the word bulb, Bravo Uniform Lima Bravo, flashing on the screen. We had never seen that before. We didn't really do anything special to get rid of it, but we are successfully taking pictures now, but just wanted to get people thinking about that just in case we see it again.
Okay, copy. Thanks for the info. We'll tell the appropriate folks.
Sounds great, and we've got Dragon in sight.
All right, copy. Dragon in sight.
And you did hear those words there, that the crew on board the International Space Station can now see Dragon as it continues its approach 1,190 meters away from the International Space Station and closing in. Really starting to be able to make out more details of the Dragon spacecraft. As you can see in this view here, the nose cone is open. It will remain open during the rendezvous and docking operations, and will remain open until Dragon undocks from the International Space Station 45 days from now. And we did just hear that the team is go for Dragon to proceed towards waypoint 0. Dragon will be at waypoint 0 once it arrives at 400 meters below space station. Right now, Dragon is less than 1,000 meters away, 980 meters away, and closing in.
Station Houston on 2 for Dragon status.
Go ahead on 2.
Dragon range is approximately 1,000 meters. Monitor long-range approach per steps 1 to 4 in 1.102 Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Copy. We are in 1.102, and we concur with the range, and we're got a good photos of Dragon.
Copy. And we also recovered your display on SSC 16.
We see good RPOP on 16. Thank you.
Copy.
Again, that was the voice of NASA Capcom Megan Harvey up to the crew on board space station, namely Nicole Mann, who is on tap today during the rendezvous and docking operations of CRS-26. The RPOP that was referenced is the Rendezvous Proximity Operations Panel again, and that is where Nicole Mann and Josh Cassada will be able to track trajectory of Dragon as it approaches for docking. Dragon and the International Space Station now flying 272 miles over South America. Dragon is now 740 meters away from the International Space Station. Everything continuing to go smoothly this morning as we are tracking an on-time docking of Dragon at 6:30 a.m. Central, 7:30 a.m. Eastern to the zenith port of the Harmony module. The Dragon you see on your screen does not have crew on board, but it does have 7,777 pounds of cargo, research, and supplies to the 7-person crew on board space station. The next major milestone that we are tracking for Dragon today is when it arrives 400 meters below the space station at what we call waypoint 0. This is the first checkpoint during our approach, and the vehicle can hold at this 400-meter distance or continue on if all systems check out. Right now, space station is 636 meters away from the space station. The International Space Station is currently flying 271 statute miles over the South Atlantic Ocean just off the coast of the Falkland Islands. Dragon is 565 meters away from the International Space Station. Again, we are looking for Dragon to arrive at that 400-meter point where it will officially be at waypoint 0. This is the first checkpoint during our approach this morning. Everything continuing to go smoothly this morning ahead of an on-time docking at 6:30 a.m. Central Time. That docking just about 51 minutes from now. On board Dragon is over 7,700 pounds of cargo, research, and supplies, including 2 International Space Station Rollout Solar Arrays, or IROSAs. These solar panels do roll out using stored kinetic energy and will help expand the energy production capabilities of the space station. Also on board Dragon is a variety of research and science experiments. One of those is the VEG-05 experiment. This experiment focuses on growing dwarf tomatoes on board the International Space Station. Also on board Dragon is a moon microscope. This is a small microscope, handheld microscope with a small self-contained blood sample staining device. With this tool, an astronaut can collect and stain a blood sample, as well as obtain images with the microscope and transmit those images to the ground, where flight surgeons can use them to diagnose illness and potentially prescribe treatment if necessary. That's just a quick snapshot at some of the science and cargo on board CRS-26, but you can check out our mission overview to read even more about the science, research, investigations, and cargo if you are interested. Dragon is currently 440 meters away from the International Space Station. Once Dragon arrives 400 meters below Space Station, it will be at that waypoint 0. This is that first checkpoint during our approach, which we've been discussing. The flight control team here in Mission Control Houston is continuing to track the Dragon's approach to the International Space Station. Everything continuing to look good. We're about 3 minutes away from reaching waypoint 0. Dragon is approaching the International Space Station about 0.2 meters per second. Dragon is 405 meters away from the International Space Station. Continuing to get HD views of Dragon as it approaches the International Space Station. The International Space Station is flying 266 statute miles over the South Atlantic Ocean. You do see that nose cone open on Dragon that will remain open until Dragon undocks from the International Space Station 45 days from now. During the ascent portion of Dragon's flight, the nose cone does stay closed to help protect the critical guidance and navigation systems as well as the docking hardware. We are standing by for a confirmation that Dragon is within the waypoint 0, and we did just get that confirmation. Dragon now within 400 meters distance from the International Space Station. And Dragon has passed through waypoint 0, everything looking good. We are still tracking an on-time docking this morning at 6:30 a.m. Central, 7:30 a.m. Eastern. Dragon is now moving towards waypoint 1, which will swing it up and out in front of the station. Dragon will then pause at a distance of approximately 220 meters. Currently, Dragon is 377 meters away from the International Space Station. Dragon is headed to the Node 2 Zenith docking port this morning.
Houston Station on 2, we are monitoring with a good block Bravo, and Dragon is in the expected attitude.
Copy.
And that voice of NASA astronaut Nicole Mann calling down to the ground, just confirming everything looking good on her end also. The team here in Mission Control Houston is continuing to monitor Dragon's approach. Again, everything looking good. The next key milestone for the team here in Mission Control will be a go, no-go poll where NASA Flight Director Ed Van Cise will poll the team for their go to approach waypoint 2. Once Dragon is only 20 meters away at waypoint 2, the spacecraft will focus on aligning its docking system with the docking adapter. Continuing to get views of Dragon as it approaches the International Space Station, now 383 meters away. Dragon has passed through the approach 0 milestone and is heading to waypoint 1. The big difference between these two, besides the distance, is waypoint 0 is directly below space station, waypoint 1 is directly in front. Once Dragon passes through waypoint 1, it will start to make its approach to go inside the keep out sphere. But the team here in Mission Control Houston will do that go no go poll before we proceed with that next step. Continuing to get those great views of Dragon as it approaches.
Houston Station on 2 for RPOP range.
With you on 2.
Hey, Megan, can you help us sort this out? We're seeing docking port to docking port as the reference frame both on RPOP and PCS. But RPOP range is about 12 meters less than the range we're seeing on PCS. Is that what you expect?
Copy the question. We're checking.
Dragon is now 418 meters away from the International Space Station, closing in at a rate of 0.17 meters per second. We're now 35 minutes away from today's planned docking of a cargo Dragon resupply vehicle with over 7,700 pounds of cargo research and science investigations. Dragon will be docking to the zenith port of the International Space Station this morning and will remain docked for 45 days before returning back to Earth with critical science and research investigations. Continuing to get great views of CRS-26 as it approaches the International Space Station, now 430 meters away. The International Space Station and Dragon are flying 259 statute miles over Nigeria.
I'm back with you on 2, Josh. I've got an answer.
Go ahead on 2, Megan.
Okay, yeah, you're seeing the correct distances on both displays. We've got a display reference frame label incorrect on the PCS. So the reference frame on the PCS right now is CG, in fact. So there's no issue except for the label, and we're going to track that for the future.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it to our attention.
And that was the voice of NASA astronaut Josh Cassada, who is on tap to monitor today's approach and docking of CRS-26. He was discussing the RPOP display, or Rendezvous Proximity Operations Panel. This is a tool on board the International Space Station that Josh Cassada and Nicole Mann will be utilizing during today's docking. Everything's still continuing to look good ahead of today's docking, tracking a 6:30 a.m. Central, 7:30 a.m. Eastern docking this morning. And this view from a camera on the port truss segment of the space station. You are seeing the Japanese robotic arm there near the center of your screen, as well as the Japanese logistics module. That does house some experiments that are conducted aboard the International Space Station. Everything continuing to go smoothly this morning ahead of today's docking, now 30 minutes from now. And we did just hear that the team here in Mission Control is go to approach waypoint 1. This is when Dragon will swing up and out in front of the space station, pausing at a distance of approximately 220 meters. Now less than 30 minutes away from the planned docking of an uncrewed SpaceX cargo resupply vehicle with over 7,700 pounds of science investigations, research, and hardware. Dragon will dock to the Zenith port of the International Space Station this morning. And you did see some small thruster firings there. That was the approach 1 burn that was taking place. This continues to enable Dragon to approach the International Space Station. The range rate is very slow at this point, about 0.04 meters per second. We're now less than 25 minutes away from the docking of CRS-26 this morning. Dragon is currently 448 meters away from the International Space Station, continuing to close in. It's currently inside the approach ellipsoid, which is that 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer by 4 kilometer imaginary oval around the International Space Station. Once Dragon is 200 meters away from the International Space Station, it will be inside the keep out sphere. To enter the keep out sphere, a vehicle must be 4 orbits safe, meaning it would stay outside that radius, even if the ability to control the vehicle was lost in a very unlikely scenario. And you're looking at a live view inside Mission Control Houston, where NASA Flight Director Ed Van Cise is leading the team during today's approach and docking operations. Dragon is currently 425 meters away from the International Space Station. We are targeting a docking 20 minutes from now at 6:30 a.m. Central, 7:30 a.m. Eastern. Once Dragon arrives at 400 meters below space station, it will be at waypoint 0. That's the first checkpoint during our approach. The vehicle can hold at the 400-meter point or continue on if all systems check out during our approach. And you're looking at a live video feed from the Orion spacecraft, which is 260 miles away from Earth. Orion launched aboard the Space Launch System from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida on November 16th and is in the midst of a 25.5-day test flight mission around the moon to test out capabilities of the spacecraft ahead of a crewed flight as part of Artemis II. You're looking at a view of some of the engines on board Orion. The largest one there is the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine. This is the main engine of the European service module and can provide 6,000 pounds of thrust. This main engine is a repurposed Space Shuttle Orbital Maneuvering System engine that has flown in space before. It flew on 19 Space Shuttle flights, beginning with STS-41G in October 1984 and ending with STS-112 in October of 2002. You're also looking at the 8 auxiliary engines on Orion. Each of these provides about 100 pounds of thrust and provides steering during burns by pulsing on and off. And this is a view from inside Mission Control Houston of the team that is continuing to monitor Dragon's approach this morning. The team is being led by NASA Flight Director Ed Van Cise. And to his right is Capcom Megan Harvey, who has been communicating with the crew, namely NASA astronaut Josh Cassada and Nicole Mann, who are prime for today's rendezvous approach and docking operations. This is the first space flight for both Cassada and Mann, both of which launched on board Crew 5 just last month.
Station Houston on Space Ground 2 for Dragon status.
Go ahead.
All right, Houston and station are go for Dragon to approach to 20 meters. And I wanted to give you a heads up for what to expect coming up in 1.102 for waypoint 2. We intend to enable Dragon continuation through 20 meters, so be ready to monitor in step 4, and you'll be watching Dragon pause for 30 seconds and then just continue on.
Okay, copy. We're going to monitor in step 4. We'll expect to pause for just 30 seconds and then move on to step 5.
Good copy.
And just a moment ago, you did hear Capcom Megan Harvey call up to the crew, and Nicole Mann was relayed the message that they do have the go to approach to waypoint 2. Waypoint 2 is located inside the Keep Out sphere, about 20 meters away from the International Space Station. All visiting vehicles to the International Space Station do take this phased approach, stopping at predetermined checkpoints for teams to run analysis on vehicle performance before continuing the approach to Space Station. If you're just joining us this morning, we're continuing to bring you live coverage ahead of a unpiloted SpaceX cargo vehicle with over 7,700 pounds of cargo research, investigations, and supplies. CRS-26 is slated to dock to the International Space Station 10 minutes from now at 6:30 a.m. Central, 7:30 a.m. Central Time. CRS-26 will dock to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module on board the International Space Station and will remain docked for 45 days before returning to Earth with critical science and research investigations. Dragon is now 239 meters away from the International Space Station, continuing to close in slow and steady at a rate of 0.17 meters per second. The next major milestone we're tracking this morning is when Dragon enters the keep-out sphere, which is that 200-meter invisible radius around the International Space Station. To enter that keep-out sphere, the vehicle must be 4 orbits safe, meaning it would stay outside that radius even if the ability to control the vehicle was lost. And coming up in just a short time from now, we can expect a go, no-go poll from the team here in Mission Control, where NASA Flight Director Ed Van Cise will poll them for their go for today's docking. Monitoring today's docking operations on board the International Space Station are NASA astronauts Josh Cassada and Nicole Mann. They're stationed at the RPOP, or Rendezvous Proximity Operations Panel. And this view you are seeing of the International Space Station from Dragon as it continues its approach. On the top right of your screen there, you can see the range. That's the distance that Dragon is away from the International Space Station. You see that number continuing to lower, now 210 meters, 209 meters away from the International Space Station. And directly below that is the rate at which Dragon is approaching the International Space Station, 0.31 meters per second currently.
Houston Station on 2 in step 3. Block Bravo is looking good. We're seeing 2 of 6 on the range in the quarter.
Copy.
And that was the voice of NASA astronaut Nicole Mann calling down from the International Space Station. Everything continuing to look good on her end as well. We're now less than 200 meters away from the International Space Station.
Houston Station on 2, we have reviewed steps 5 and 6, and we are ready for docking.
Copy. Sounds good.
And you were seeing some city lights and are continuing to see some city lights pass from below as the International Space Station flies 257 statute miles over China. Now that we are inside the keep out sphere, which is that 200-meter radius around the International Space Station, the next milestone we'll be tracking is waypoint 2, which is when Dragon will be only 20 meters away from the International Space Station. This is where Dragon makes sure it's perfectly aligned with the Node 2 zenith port. Now less than 160 meters away from the International Space Station, Dragon continuing to close in at a rate of 0.3 meters per second. And we are continuing to proceed towards docking this morning. Dragon now 119 meters away from the International Space Station and closing in at a rate of 0.3 meters per second. Everything continuing to go smoothly and as expected this morning. We were targeting a docking at 6:30 a.m. Central, but we do expect that to be just a few minutes later than anticipated. The next milestone we're tracking is waypoint 2 arrival, which will be about 5 minutes from now. Waypoint 2 is only 20 meters away from the International Space Station, and this is a good place to hold for lighting if there might be more preferable conditions. And this is also where Dragon makes sure it's perfectly aligned with the Node 2 zenith port. About 5 minutes after leaving waypoint 2, Dragon will make contact with its new home, the International Space Station. Now less than 100 meters separating CRS-26 from the International Space Station. Continuing to hear good callouts, Dragon configured for docking, everything looking as expected this morning. Dragon now less than 80 meters away from the space station. We are looking ahead to its arrival at waypoint 2, which is only 20 meters from the space station. We do expect that to occur about 3 minutes from now. At this time, NASA astronauts Josh Cassada and Nicole Mann are inside the cupola at the RPOP, or Rendezvous Proximity Operations Panel, and monitoring today's approach. And we did just get confirmation that the poll to proceed towards docking is all green, everything looking good across the board. Dragon is now inside the 50-meter point, continuing to close in slow and steady at 0.3 meters per second. Starting to be able to make out more details of the zenith or space-facing port of Harmony, where Dragon is proceeding towards docking, now 34 meters only separating Dragon from space station. Again, everything looking good as Dragon continues its approach, now 23 meters away from the International Space Station. And as expected, as Dragon nears the International Space Station, its approach will slow down even further. It now is within the 20-meter mark, now moving at a range rate of only 0.01 meters per second. Dragon is now at waypoint 2, that 20-meter mark.
Houston Station on 2, we see RDOT at 0 at 19.8 meters.
Copy. And station on 2, Dragon is resuming approach and is go for docking. Monitor for steps 5 and 6 in 1.102.
Copy, we're monitoring in steps 5 and 6, and we see approach to docking port mode, range decreasing, and block Bravo looks good.
Copy.
And everything looking good, continuing the approach towards docking this morning. now moving past waypoint 2. So again, Dragon is now resuming approach and is go for docking. Dragon is now 15 meters away from the International Space Station, closing in at a rate of 0.08 meters per second. Everything continuing to look good this morning. And you are seeing some small thruster firing as Dragon nears the 10-meter range. We are in a brief expected handover between satellites, but we do expect to regain communication and video views here shortly. Everything continuing to look good for today's docking. Dragon is now 5 meters away from the space station, continuing to close in. We don't have views from the space station right now, but we are getting data and receiving the reports from the crew as well, proceeding towards a contact here shortly. 3 meters in closing. We did hear a call for CHOP, or crew hands-off period.
Crew hands off point.
One meter in closing.
Dragon contact and soft capture complete.
And we do have a confirmed soft capture at 6:39 a.m. Central, 7:39 a.m. Eastern, while the International Space Station was flying over the Pacific Ocean. So again, we do have a soft capture that was confirmed. So at this time, the ring is retracting, that is helping to pull the Dragon in closer to the International Docking Adapter.
Ring retraction in progress.
Station copies.
We will continue to stay on the air and provide coverage until we get past a hard mate with the International Space Station. But again, we did have contact confirmed at 6:39 a.m. Central, 7:39 a.m. Eastern, while the International Space Station was flying over the Pacific Ocean. After the soft capture ring is fully retracted and pulling that Dragon in for a nice tight seal, there will be 12 hooks that will actually hard mate and hard dock the vehicle to the International Space Station. Those hooks are latched in gangs of 6, so 6 at a time will close and then the other 6 will close, and at that point we'll have the hard dock with the International Space Station. But we did get that soft capture confirmed at 6:39 a.m. Central. The soft capture ring is continuing to pull in Dragon, everything going as planned. We are standing by for a good soft capture ring retraction. And if you're just joining us, the uncrewed CRS-26 cargo craft docked with the International Space Station just a few minutes ago at 6:39 a.m. Central while flying over the Pacific Ocean. CRS-26 launched yesterday afternoon from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. On board CRS-26 is over 7,700 pounds of cargo, research supplies, and investigations. We don't currently have live views from the International Space Station, but we are still receiving data from the vehicle.
Ring retraction complete. Docking sequence is holding for MCS reconfiguration.
Station copies.
And you did hear that the soft capture ring has fully retracted, meaning the soft capture ring did its job of pulling the spacecraft in closer to the International Space Station. Next up, those hooks will begin driving to perform a hard mate between the two vehicles.
MCS is configured, proceeding with hook driving.
Station copies. Thank you.
And that hook driving process has begun. And we are now getting a view from Dragon of the International Space Station following its docking at 6:39 a.m. Central. The soft capture ring did do its job, and at this point the hooks are now driving Once all 12 of these hooks are successfully in place, that will have the hard mate and a hard dock between the two vehicles. There are 2 gangs of 6 hooks. The first set of those hooks is currently driving. Standing by for a confirmation that the first set of 6 hooks have driven and have closed. And you are seeing this view of Dragon docked to the International Space Station. Again, docking did occur at 6:39 a.m. Central, 7:39 a.m. Eastern. Dragon has now docked to the space station and has brought with it over 7,700 pounds of cargo, research, and science investigations. And we did have confirmation that the first set of 6 of those 12 total hooks have driven successfully. Once the other 6 hooks successfully drive into place, we will have a hard mate between Dragon and the space station.
Houston, station on 2 for timeline.
With you on 2.
Hey, Megan, we are transitioning over to node 2, and Anya is standing by for your go on A-Red.
Copy. We are just waiting for hard capture complete, and then we'll be able to give her that go.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, and great work down there today. We're excited to unpack and get to work.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a room full of happy flight controllers down here. It's exciting to see SpaceX Dragon 26 join ISS, and hopefully you can enjoy your well-deserved and long-awaited ice cream soon. All right, and I can report hard capture is complete.
Hard capture is complete. Understand I can give Anna a go on A-Red, and thank you for spoiling the surprise about the Morozhny.
Da, budu otlично. So, for the docking sequence, we just have to wait for umbilicals to be deployed, and then I'll be giving you a go for press and ingress part 1.
Sounds great. We'll be ready.
And we did get that confirmation that hard mate was successful, and you did hear some words from NASA astronaut Josh Cassada calling down to Capcom Megan Harvey. One of the things that they discussed was the go to enable exercising on board the International Space Station again. During docking operations, exercise is not permitted in order to reduce any vibrations that could occur. And then you also did hear Josh Cassada hear the good news that there is some special treats on board CRS-26, including what sounds like ice cream. So with Dragon now safely on board the International Space Station, that will wrap up today's rendezvous and docking coverage, but we'll have continued coverage of NASA's Artemis 1 mission following liftoff of Orion from the Space Launch System in Florida on November 16th. Orion's currently in a distant retrograde orbit around the moon and has surpassed the distance record for a mission with a spacecraft designed to carry humans to deep space and back to Earth. Orion passed that record just yesterday at 7:42 a.m. Tomorrow will actually mark the halfway point of the 25.5-day mission of Artemis 1. We will have a press conference on Monday to discuss the halfway point of this historic mission, and you can tune in to hear more from NASA leaders at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. But for today, with Dragon now successfully docked to the International Space Station at 6:39 a.m. Central Time, and 7,777 pounds of cargo now arrived safely, that will do it for us here in Mission Control. Thanks so much for joining this morning.